Now you can get shows like Today's Issues straight from the source.
Put back on the next.
Just say unbanned.
Unbanned.
Just search AFA Streaming or visit streaming.afa.net to sign up. Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network, American Family Radio. Today's Wednesday, December the 6th, 2023. I'm Tim Wildman, and again with Ed Battagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
And Fred Jackson.
Good day, sir.
So tomorrow, fellow, I was looking at December 6th. Tomorrow is the Pearl Harbor commemoration, right?
Anniversary of.
I say commemoration. We remember.
Yes.
What happened December 7th, 1941, right?
Yes.
That will be tomorrow. Have you ever been there to the...
I have not.
Okay. I haven't.
We've been...
I've never been to Hawaii.
Okay. I've been twice, and Pearl Harbor, of course, is in Honolulu. And you can go, many people listening have done this, I'm sure, if they've been to Hawaii. You can take a short boat ride out to the USS Arizona, where the, where that's the place they take you to say, okay, this is the number of, they tell you the story
right
of Pearl Harbor and how many died and so forth. And at the time I went, the last time I went was probably 15 years ago. They say the oil is still leaking
from the Arizona.
I don't know if that's still the case or not.
Yeah,
you could see the oil,
and there's still sailors entombed, right?
Yeah. Yes, that was a very dark day in our country's history. Maybe we'll talk about that maybe more tomorrow. But I just wondered if you fellas had ever had a chance to go. Have you ever been to Hawaii, Fred?
Have not. Have
Okay.
not.
It's a bunch of islands. It's way out in the Pacific Ocean. Takes a long time to get there.
I saw some movie years ago. I can't even remember what it was. And this guy was trying to catch a flight back to the continental United States. So he's at the airline, trying to get a ticket, and he said, I'd like a catch a flight back to the United
Mainland?
States, to the United States. And the lady said, we're part of the United States, sir. It was just a funny exchange. I have no idea what it was. Or maybe I saw a clip or something, but it was about Hawaii kind of getting treated poorly.
Right. All right, a lot to talk about today. Thank you for listening. Ed, tell folks how they can join us on what you affectionately call their internet.
Well, if you want to watch the live video stream of this program, you have three options. You can go to Facebook or YouTube and search for Today's Issues, or in the case of YouTube, Today's Issues Live. Or you can go to our own streaming service, streaming.afa.net, streaming.afa.net. This program, as well as a number of other radio talk show programs, has a live video stream, live only. The video is not included in our podcasts. For audio podcasts, you can go to afr.net. There is a drop-down menu for podcasts. We do also encourage you, if you're going to be outside the range of your terrestrial radio station, check out the AFR app. Thousands and thousands of people are now listening to American Family Radio 24/7, anywhere they have a good signal on the AFR app.
Yeah, and tell your friends and family about us, too.
Amen.
We need to recruit new listeners.
That's right.
And the best way that we can do that is have you who listen faithfully to tell other people that you know would listen to American Family Radio if they knew about it. Again, now that we're available on the app, we can be listened to anywhere that has, if you have decent internet coverage, you can download the app and listen anywhere. So take advantage of that, the American Family Radio app. What's your first story, Fred?
Well, when I mentioned the name of Riley Gaines, I think it is safe to say she has become the face of the fight for women to keep the integrity in women's sports. In other words, keep guys who call themselves women out of women's sports.
She's like Wonder Woman right now.
She is absolutely
Fearless.
incredible. She is fearless. Well, yesterday, the House Oversight Subcommittee on Health held a hearing, and it didn't take long for there to be an encounter involving Riley Gaines. She was challenged very early on with the ranking Democrat member, Summer Lee. She's the Democrat from Pennsylvania. She's also a member of the Squad. And she wanted, this Democrat, wanted any testimony from Riley Gaines and her supporters struck from the record because she says, Summer Lee says, you're all transphobic or phobic. You're all transphobic. You just hate guys who call themselves girls.
Right.
All right. So we get that statement from Summer
This
Lee.
was in the Congress yesterday.
This
at
was
a
in the
hearing.
Congress
Okay.
at a hearing yesterday. So what you're going to hear from Summer Lee, but then you're going to hear the response from Riley Gaines to what Summer Lee had to say. Cut number 4.
Although the title of this hearing implies a much-needed discussion, we're likely going to be forced to listen to transphobic bigotry. Forcing a transgender child to choose between living an authentic life and playing a game is cruel. I ask that while we sit through this hearing and hear the hateful misinformation I'm sure is going to come our way, let us not forget that children are at the core of this issue.
There is a place for everyone, regardless of gender identity, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race or what sports you play. There's a place for everyone to play sports in this country. But unsafe, unfair, and discriminatory practices towards women must stop. Inclusion cannot be prioritized over safety and fairness. And Ranking Member Lee, if my testimony makes me transphobic, then I believe your opening monologue makes you a misogynist.
Oh,
Bingo.
yes.
As you say, Tim. You know what? Now, members of Congress do have the right to ask that testimony be stricken from the record. Okay, and in this case, it would appear in the congressional record. But it is absolute hypocrisy for this Congresswoman to do this after she went on a tirade insulting Riley Gaines. She can't even take one comeback and leave that in the record.
Nope.
Which indicates to me, and it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt, we all know this is true. These people in Congress, in corporate America, in the spheres of education, Hollywood, what they are after is absolute submission. You will buy what we're selling, or we will bounce you off social media. We will stop advertising with you in terms of corporate America, all these kinds of things. And now this Congresswoman shows her absolute hypocrisy.
It sounded like to me there she wanted Riley Gaines' testimony stricken from the record before it was ever even recorded.
Yes.
I mean, because she's saying we're about to hear a bunch of transphobic hate from these bigots, and I want that stricken from the record, the congressional record. You know, they're there to have that's absurd, because they're there to have a discussion and to have testimony about the impact of men and boys playing girl sports. I don't care how and that's what Riley Gaines said. I think it doesn't matter to me, basically, how they want to identify the boys and the men. They want to identify as girls and women, but they can't play sports against real women.
Right.
That's all we're saying. That's what she's saying. She's been a champion. She is one of the bravest people I've seen in a long time, Riley Gaines, because she gets hate mail, she gets calls. She has to have bodyguards when she travels, basically. And
She's been assaulted
on
college campuses before?
She's basically, 23 years old, something in that range. I don't know how old she is exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But we just so admire her.
Yes.
And her guts. She's a Christian.
23 years old.
Young lady, so I guessed it right.
Mm-hmm.
Ought to be in the fair with my accuracy on guessing ages. And you just don't guess a woman's weight, though.
No.
You get in trouble right there.
That's right.
But you know what? She's what an answer she gave right back to that What was the congresswoman's name?
Summer Lee,
Okay, I was not familiar with her.
Democrat from
She's-
Pennsylvania.
She's a lower profile member of the squad with AOC and all that that group right there.
Riley Gaines was on Fox and Friends this morning. She was asked about this exchange, and here's her response. Cut number 5.
Was that an ad-libbed line?
Yes, of course, I was not prepared to add that into my testimony. I felt compelled to call her misogynist because if it's immediately deemed anti-trans to take the stand that I've taken, which I believe is a pro-woman stance, wouldn't it be anti-woman to be pro-trans?
She is a smart lady right there.
Yeah.
She's absolutely right.
Yeah, it wasn't in her script.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to take it from Congresswoman
No.
Summer Lee.
No.
You know what also indicates that Riley Gaines is the real deal, and by that I mean she is courageous. Okay, because she's done in terms of working in corporate America or anything like that. I mean, she came out of college because of her experiences as an NCAA winning swimmer. All right.
She excuse me for interrupting. She was the one, I think, that finished second place to that dude. Remember the dude that when all this
Will
started?
Thomas.
Well, she argues that they tied, but the organizers of
Yes.
the event put him on the high pedestal.
And this was for a championship race. I've forgotten
Yes.
what championship was. Remember that?
Yes.
I never will forget the picture of Riley Gaines looking up at this 6'3" guy who claims to be who just raced to win, quote, win in women's competition. He was on the men's team for the last 3
for the
years.
first 2 years of his college career, maybe first 3 years.
Yeah.
and wasn't
to-
the star.
And yes,
Right.
no, that's right. And to your point, Fred, he when they tied, you're right. It was a tie. They brought them both back, and they told Riley Gaines, "We only have one trophy, and we're giving it to him."
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
they said to her.
They said to her.
quote unquote.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, why? Why don't I get a trophy? We tied. We only have one trophy, and we want to give it to the trans swimmer."
I didn't hear the whole exchange after that, after what we just played, but I would like to ask this congresswoman, what's her name again?
Summer Lee.
Summer Lee. She's a black lady from Pennsylvania.
Correct.
Okay. Ma'am, do you believe you're a black person? And do you think a white person can say they're a black person? And you would say, yeah, they are, because they say they are. Or would you say a black person can say they're an Eskimo? And you're supposed to say, yes, you are an Eskimo because you say you are. No, everybody knows that's absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
And it's so, but the same person who would say you can't do that would say a man, a 6'3" man, can say he's a woman or a girl, and we're all supposed to clap and say, yes, you are.
Right.
I think it may have been you, Ed, that had this analogy or this explanation that when the world, by the world I mean the pop culture, the Hollywood, the liberals, when they applaud somebody who is a man who says he's a woman, or vice versa, a woman who says she's a man, and we're supposed to all assent to that, and we're supposed to all pretend that that's true. You said it's akin to telling a person with anorexia. Tell.
Yeah, well, the point I was making is that when we approach someone with a problem, the wrong idea about what they are, and that's what gender dysphoria is in terms of gender. But anorexia is an eating disorder in which a person who has it actually believes they're fat. And so they adjust their eating habits and literally starve themselves to death in order to make their body line up with the confusion in their minds. Well, we don't applaud those people.
No.
We don't tell them to, we don't encourage them. We don't tell them, yes, you are fat. You need to, to go on a diet. No, we take them in for treatment or encourage them to get treatment so they can bring their mind in line with the bodily reality. Mm-hmm. And that's what we should be doing with transgender. You know, 100 years ago, if somebody said, I feel like I'm in the wrong body, the image I have in my mind, I know biologically I'm a male, but the image I have in my mind is that I'm a female, they would have fixed the mind 100 years ago.
Yeah.
They would have said, you need to adjust your thinking to the reality of your body. Now we've flipped that. Now we're telling people to adjust your body and force everyone else to agree with it so that the body lines up with what you have going on in your head.
Yeah, well, good for Riley Gaines. I hope to meet her one day. She was in Tupelo not too long ago for something, but I didn't get a chance to go to the event. But we just so much admire her and applaud her. And she's been on this program before. Next story, Fred.
Well, there was another hearing yesterday, and this had to deal with the incredible demonstrations of anti-Semitism that we have seen on the campuses of well-known universities and colleges. I'm talking Harvard, talking MIT, and other major schools.
Many places that I turned down. I just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, what happened yesterday, there was a committee hearing, and the presidents from Harvard, from Penn, and from MIT were called to be part of this hearing because Republicans want to know, how is it that this has exploded since the October 7th massacre in Israel? We are seeing these campuses anti-Israel, pro-Hamas. They advertise themselves as pro-Palestinian. How is this allowed to occur? How is this anti-Semitism? Because we know it's been brewing for years on these campuses. They were not called on it, but yesterday there was this hearing. And what you're going to hear here is Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, a Republican from New York, challenging these university presidents. What are you going to do? How is this happening? This open anti-Semitism on your campuses. Cut number 6.
Calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct.
It depends on the context.
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules?
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman. Depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
Calling for the genocide of Jews, and you heard the response there. Well, it depends on the context. Can you imagine if it was another group? If it was Muslims, would you think these university presidents would say, well, it depends on the context of the person? Or if it was a minority, Hispanic, black, do you think that these university presidents would defend that? Not for a second.
No, that's horrifying. And for Jewish students on these college campuses, that only confirms what they've been feeling, which for the most part has been fear. About walking around. You have college campuses warning Jewish students not to go out into public demonstrating that they're Jewish somehow. Yeah. I don't know whether they're talking about, headwear or other kinds of, shawls or what have
last
you.
Names you can tell, too, a lot of times.
Well, they were just telling them not to go out and
physically, like a yarmulke.
Yes, or I don't know if when they wear prayer shawls or what.
Right.
But they were basically warning them you could be subject to violence, and so these kinds of comments, which are not clear and concise, what these individuals should have said. Yes, it is absolutely against our code of conduct. Any student calling for genocide will be expelled. Any student who is physically assaults another student on the basis of their nationality, ethnicity, or race, no matter who it is, expelled.
Yeah.
But that's not what they said.
It was interesting this morning on Fox and Friends, a New York University student, a Jewish student there, Bella Ingber is her name. And I want you to hear her testimony she gave this morning of what life is like for her on the campus of New York University. Cut 7.
Walking to class, I'm passing torn and defaced posters of innocent Israeli hostages that were taken with words like occupier, murderer, deserved written across their faces. These are 10-month-old babies. These are elderly women, elderly men, some of them Holocaust survivors, many of them Holocaust survivors that were taken by a terrorist organization. It is sitting in the library with faculty members and students holding unauthorized protests on school property where they call for the annihilation of the Jewish state and of the Jewish people. They chant, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." They're chanting "Gas the Jews" at these protests. They are calling for claims that Hitler was correct, Hitler was right. I'm the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. It sends a chill down my spine to hear those words thrown around so carelessly and so thoughtlessly.
And again, if it was any other group,
right,
this would not be tolerated.
Listen, you're probably not even allowed.
I don't know. Against evangelical Christians, it would be.
Oh yeah, but we haven't.
That's it. That's it for it, huh?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They hate us too.
Yeah.
These same people that hate the Jews, they don't have anything for us either.
Yeah. I was just going to say, in the context of a college campus, a speaker who comes and would talk about radical Islam, about jihad, and about the kind of ideology that produces the kind of people that write these things on the posters, they would be accused of Islamophobia.
Oh, yes.
For saying those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true. If they were to, I mean, for you to write "deserved" on the poster of a 10-month-old baby, you got some kind of sickness going on.
Yeah.
Inside your head.
I think there's been a real wake-up call, even amongst liberal Jews here in the United States, as to the level of hatred. Because most of these kids going to these schools, I would guess, come from liberal families, come from probably families that vote Democrat, and they're not getting any support from the Democratic Party.
Most of them are probably otherwise woke, but now wokeness, the quote wokeness, has been turned on them in a lethal way, and it's a very scary time to be a Jew in America, or a Jew around the world.
Right.
But maybe not everywhere in the U.S., but certainly on college campus at many of these, quote, prestigious, end quote, universities. I tell you what, let's take our break a little early here. How many of you knew we were taking a break early? Raise your hand. Okay, Fred did. Taking a break about 1 minute early. Is Abraham Hamilton III going to be on? Okay. Abe Hamilton, our constitutional attorney, one of them. Jen Ellis is also a constitutional attorney. Ed would have been, but
God called me into the ministry.
Yeah.
Oh well.
And broke his mama's heart.
Yes, and my dad's heart. Let's just get it all out there.
Our son was going to be
he was going to be a lawyer,
a fancy lawyer, and then he decided to be a preacher. Later in life, they changed when they got saved.
My mom did.
We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Jesus said, and we find it in Matthew, the 7th chapter, "For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." You know, one thing a person learns early about life is that it wasn't meant to be easy. From the moment the baby leaves the protection of the mother's security, it begins to cry. And from that moment on, life never lets up on its demands on those who try to take it seriously. Now, basically, there are two attitudes one can take toward life. One is the take care of myself, don't care too much about the other person, don't get too involved attitude. And this is by far the most traveled road of life for the simple reason that it places no demands upon us that we don't want. We can do as we please or not do as we please. We're content just to live our lives out, patting ourselves on the back, telling ourselves we're doing all that we should be doing. But there's another attitude toward life. That attitude says life is a sacred trust given to us by the Eternal Father, and that it should be used for the benefit of Him and our fellow man. This way of living is very demanding. Very few are those who are willing to strive toward this life. It places demands upon us that we don't want, causes us to strive toward what the masses call the impossible. This is often a very lonely way of living, since those who have common goals are few in number. Many times we're tempted to give it up, to call it quits, to say with a carefree lot that it's an impossibility to live toward that high calling. We're tempted to lower our goals, tone down our plea, and think more about ourselves. But then we ultimately come back to this. Life isn't supposed to be easy. It is supposed to be a challenge. And the very moment we cease working toward that high calling, we begin to deteriorate into nothing but a self-satisfied, selfish human that joins the don't-care crowd. When we get to the place where we're ready to throw in the towel and call it quits, what we really need is to know that what we're doing has some eternal, lasting significance to it. For as long as a person can believe that what he is doing has God's stamp of approval on it, he can face any obstacle that stands before him. But once he quits believing in his high calling, he's doomed to a life of selfishness. Sometimes the night gets dark, awful dark, and you begin to question whether or not you should forget that high calling. For your job becomes hard, and you see very little chance of it getting any easier in the future. In times like that, the only thing that will sustain one is the knowledge that what he is doing has God's approval, and that his efforts will not be in vain, and that his God will gladly pour out his grace on those who need it. Life is easy only when we are selfish. It is hard when we choose the high road. And while it gets to be awful dark sometimes on the high road, we need to remember that daylight always follows darkness.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Psalm 139, 23, and 24.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Hey, if you want to send us an email, you can do that at the following address. Now, the email needs to be a K-Love email. That's what we call them. Why do we say that? K-Love, which is a Christian radio network, plays music all across America, and they do a fine job with that ministry. But they say that K-Love is positive and encouraging. So I took that and said, we want a K-Love email. So if people want to send us emails, we want it to be what, Ed?
We want it to be
positive
and encouraging.
And encouraging.
Yes.
Right. Or you can call it a Joel Osteen email. I don't care. Whatever you want to call it. Same principle. Positive and encouraging.
Yes.
And you can send that to comments@afr.net. 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 Well, unfortunately, not everything's going on in the world is positive and encouraging. But we do. That's why we exist here at AFA, to fight back against the culture that wants to tear down our Judeo-Christian history and heritage and value system. And so we and others fight back against that. Joining us to talk about something in the news that we're doing here is Abraham Hamilton III. Abe is a constitutional lawyer. He's our general counsel. He's host of the Hamilton Corner, heard each afternoon here. So he's also a talk show host here on American Family Radio from 5 to 6 o'clock Central Time. And he's usually in studio, but he's not today. Good morning, Abe.
Good morning. I'm also positive and encouraging.
Thank you. Thank you for being a blessing.
Well, brother,
Right there.
each day I like to start off with a story.
And who might you be imitating there, Abe? Okay. So, listen. One of the threats from the left in this country, the secular left's what I call them, although not all of them are secular. Some of them are just. Some of them may be religious, but it's a demonic religion, whatever it is that they're a part of. But they want to force everyone to comply to their worldview or else. And one of the things they're trying to do is force even ministries to surrender on their mission statement and their biblical beliefs on human sexuality and be forced to hire people that live in a lifestyle that's contrary to the Bible and contrary to the mission statement of said organization. One of them's been in the news here is World Vision. Mm-hmm. Most people have heard of World Vision. They do work all over the world for orphans and trying
feeding the poor,
trying to find sponsors for kids and so forth. And what is the but here in the U.S. they are under attack by whom, Abe?
Well, in this instance, it's an employee who, and I'll zoom out a little bit. They're under attack, I would say, by the spirit of the age, old Beelzebub, you name it. In this instance, the tip of the attack spear is a person who signed their statement of faith, agreed to abide by their core principles, committed to expressing an orthodox view of the scripture, including on sexuality, while at the exact same time, this woman was cultivating a lesbian relationship and entered into a homosexual marriage. When World Vision learned about that, they communicated to this now former employee that she was in violation of their religious beliefs, their organizational principles, and she'd actually violated the terms with which she had previously been hired. And so they terminated her employment. Well, she filed a lawsuit against World Vision under Title VII of the federal law for discrimination, unlawful discrimination, and a state law claim for discrimination. And
so why are we watching this case so closely? This is in federal court. I say we. I think the whole religious community in America is watching this particular case. Go ahead and tell us why. Go ahead.
I mean, going all the way back to the Obergefell decision when Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote the opinion that granted federal sanction for same-sex marriage. It was identified that these were some of the things that would be brought into play, and he said that we'll just have to deal with those when we get to them. Same thing happened in the Jack Phillips case. Same thing happened in the Bostic case. This is one of the issues with the Bostic opinion that was ruled based on the employment context, but saying that a man can, dress outside of the Christian funeral homes owners required dress code because he had a right to be protected against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and perceived gender identity. And so the reason why we're watching this, and Christians all around the world, all around our country are watching it, because here you have the sexual deviancy socio-political agenda coming against religious freedom, the freedoms of Christians, Christian organizations, ministries, and ultimately churches to live according to the Bible, abide by the Bible, and operate their organizations and entities according to the Bible. That's why we're watching.
Okay, let me ask you this. So what these folks want to do with this court case, this federal court case, and what these secular lefties want to do, and they're open about it, they want to say to a Christian ministry, yes, you have a code that you have that your employees have to live by, but if it goes against the LGBTQ agenda, then we're going to fine you or cite you or revoke your license or drive you out, otherwise drive you out of business. That's what
either you change your code or you no longer operate.
Right.
That's ultimately what they're going for.
And World Vision has lost a couple rounds on this, right? in the courts.
Yeah, they won the first round. Then the district judge reversed course on 2 second rounds, if you will, at the district court level. I do believe ultimately World Vision will prevail, but it's going to require them to have the stamina, the longevity, and ultimately the funding to be able to continue litigation unless they have somebody representing them pro bono to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. Because the district judge Robart in this case, who initially ruled in World Vision's favor and then in 2 subsequent rounds ruled against them, completely ignored the fact that this employee represented herself to World Vision as abiding by Orthodox Christianity, signing their statement of faith, agreeing with the employee code of conduct, only to learn after she was hired that none of that was true. And the judge just ignored that as if that had no bearing whatsoever on this woman's occupation. They hired her where she was in a position where she would have to interact with donors and people who would call in. And the ministry, World Vision, says often our people call in, they want people to pray with them. What if somebody's calling and struggling with same-sex attraction and they get her on the phone? She will be the face of our ministry. We can't have a person like her in that position. And the judge in this case said there's nothing about her practices and even her religious beliefs that'll prevent her from praying with donors and things of that nature. I'm like, on what planet are you living on, Judge? This is absurd, but this is where we are.
So what is one of the issues that's entered into this?
By the way, Abe, your voice is starting to rise exponentially.
I'm sorry, brother. I need to go back to my story.
You need to
be positive and encouraging.
Thank you. No, I'm just teasing. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, so one of the things that's at issue here is the church autonomy doctrine. Can you just explain to our listeners what this means and why it has traditionally been important in cases of this nature?
Yeah, simply put, the church autonomy doctrine is the application in a state system of the First Amendment that simply says government cannot compel church polity or doctrinal positions to churches. In our country, up until this point, up until this one case, the government has long held. This is one of the same reasons why John MacArthur was successful in his litigation that, as you mentioned earlier, Tim Janelle has represented John MacArthur in, is because the state of California cannot dictate when, where, and how the church is supposed to gather. The same thing applies here in Washington, which this judge initially agreed and said, listen, we as the court system, that we cannot compel World Vision's doctrinal policies, their ministerial requirements, and things of that nature. And so to see this judge reverse course in just a mere 6 weeks is very, very troubling, because it has the potential, if allowed to stand, to completely unravel the proper application of the First Amendment. The separation of church and state, which is 8 words that are not in the Constitution, it was never intended to keep the church from the government, but it's actually intended to operate in the opposite direction, to keep the government through its state apparatus, through its federal apparatus, and even through its court system from dictating to the church where the church stands on doctrine and matters of church polity.
All right. There's one other case I wanted to ask you about. It was the one we were talking about on Reason and Company the other day. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know very well what you're talking about. Mid-Vermont Christian Academy.
Go ahead. So, tell folks about that case.
Yeah, I'll try to do it as quickly as I can. The state of Vermont has a tuition reimbursement program because it's has a rural state. The program exists that if you live in a district that does not have a public school, then families can send their children to any school of their choice, and the state will reimburse them for the tuition. All right? Well, the state of Vermont has recently decided that it will not allow that tuition program to reimburse families who send their children to Mid-Vermont Christian Academy. Why? Because Mid-Vermont Christian Academy abides by the Bible's teaching on gender, sexuality, and identity. Gotcha. So the government is attempting to punish these families and the school ultimately by saying, because of your beliefs on sexuality, that you can't participate in this program. Also, your school can't participate in sports. Thankfully, our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom are representing several families at Mid-Vermont Christian Academy and the school itself in fighting against this, because there was a case just like this, the exact same fact pattern that came out of Maine, Carson versus Macon. The Supreme Court just ruled in the summer of 2022 that if a state has a program, they cannot exclude Christian schools from the program solely because of their religious beliefs. So to have a state to completely ignore a directly applicable Supreme Court precedent in addition to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution is extremely egregious, and I expect also for the state of Vermont to lose there.
It's going to become, but it is becoming harder and harder for Christian families to stay in blue states. I mean, there are a lot of Christians in blue states, but I mean, as we've seen by these couple of examples, they're coming at these far left governors and AGs and so forth. They're coming after Christians and Christian families and churches, and basically they're trying to make them bend the knee on the LGBTQ issue. That is
the issue.
That's what's at hand. All right, listen, Abe, what are you going to be talking about this afternoon?
Well, I'll be doing a little bit of preview of tonight's debate with the now 4 candidates for the Republican nomination for the presidency: Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, and Chris Christie. And we'll be setting up for that, which will take place this evening.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Abe.
Thank you.
Okay, that's Abraham Hamilton III joining us right there. And that's, we're engaged in these issues, folks, because there's a war for the soul of our country.
Amen.
And we can't afford to lose. We can't afford to lose. And so there are a lot of other organizations that are doing similar work as what we do in terms of fighting back in various and different ways. We have some law firms that are in the courts that are friends of ours that do their part in the media, legislatively in Washington, D.C., and on a state level. I can't stress to you how important it is to elect good state representatives and attorney generals of your state, and governors. Governors are going to become more and more critical as we try to fight against the takeover of our country completely by the federal government. Well, who controls the federal government? Basically, the liberals do in Washington, D.C., in a lot of ways. So we're having to fight back against one of the things that our founding fathers built in to our system of government in America was a resistance to centralized power. They made it hard to have centralized power. That's how dictatorships succeed. Totalitarian states, what do? They centralize power so that everything's controlled in one place. And that's what's happened to our country in a large extent. Ed, is these federal agencies, we've talked about them before. The Congress is, and now when you have a White House controlled by the Democrats, you see what they want to do. They want to take over as much power. They want to take as much power from the states as they possibly can.
Yeah, and that's why I say, now this may seem unfair to some people, but I believe this is the truth. When I say that progressives, quote unquote, using air quote, progressives, I like what Abe calls them, regressives. When I say progressives hate the Constitution, all right, you're not going to find any progressives who will say that. They might not even know they hate the Constitution. You say, what do you mean? Well, the Constitution, this is what you were saying, Tim, has created separation of powers, checks and balances.
Right.
It disperses power between the federal, state, and local level.
Right.
But real progressives, people who want to create basically an all-powerful administrative state, they hate the separation of powers because they want to concentrate power. They want to drain away whatever authority and power exists on the state and local level and put it in Washington, D.C. Here's a point of proof. The Biden administration, through the Department of Education, threatening local school boards and saying if you do not implement transgender ideology and allow trans students to use the bathroom of their choice, we'll take money away. Okay, that is controlling the school activities on the local level from Washington, D.C. So the Constitution becomes an obstacle to true progressive statism and the administrative state. So whether they admit it or not, whether they even understand it or not, they have to chip away one small step at a time at the separation of powers. That's why we mentioned this earlier in the week. That's why we have the income tax. Okay? That's why
federal income tax.
Federal income tax. That's why we no longer have states select their senators. These are two amendments to the Constitution that changed the Constitution in order to make Washington, D.C. more powerful. Okay, because our states used to vote. States voted for their own senators. Now we have made it into, and I'm talking about the state legislatures, voted for the senators. And now we have, basically have these nationalized elections. Anyway, it's clear to me that the Constitution has to go or be radically changed. I mean, if you're going to have the federal government ordering people to get vaccines from Washington, D.C., whatever you think about the efficacy of the vaccine, whether it did A, B, or C, they were telling people all across the country. They were issuing instructions from Health and Human Services, HHS, to hospitals. You have got any healthcare worker has to get the vaccine. This is completely opposite of what the founding fathers envisioned, and this is all flowing out of a quote unquote progressive worldview.
And just think you've got education. You mentioned that healthcare,
right?
Mention that. Next coming, next on the stage, folks, is climate change.
Yes,
they want to control what we eat.
Right.
And you may say, what are you talking about? USDA is going to start controlling how many heads of cattle a farmer can have.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden, that beef cow is a danger to the climate. And so we want to cut back on the amount of meat people eat.
From Washington, D.C.
From Washington, D.C. This is what's coming. They're going to order you what kind of car you can drive.
Listen, they've already told us what kind of light bulbs we can have.
Yes.
What kind of toilets we can have.
Yes.
How much water is flushed.
Yeah.
The Biden administration wants to control whether you can have gas stoves. Changing the requirements and regulations for air conditioners. All this is coming from what? Now, maybe you agree with that. Maybe you want that. Okay. I'm saying that's not in the Constitution.
Yes.
And not the role of the federal government.
Not the role of the federal government.
To force you to do this. And I tell you what, I keep seeing these stories pop up every now and then, these 15-minute cities.
Yes. Explain what that means.
15-minute city. Basically, they want to put you in a community where you don't need a car anymore, folks. You're just going to walk to work.
Yeah.
And you'll have a grocery store. By the way, we'll control what's in the grocery store. We'll control what kind of companies are allowed to operate within the 15-minute city.
And if you do have a car and you drive outside that 15-mile or 15-minute radius,
yes,
we're going to tax you extra.
Did you guys see last week, I think there was a story about the city of New York considering now a $15 penalty for anybody who drives their car to work.
Yes.
So if you live in New Jersey and you happen to drive into the city to work, we're going to penalize you $15 a pop.
A day.
A day.
Yeah.
So we're not just conspiracy crazy people here.
And by the way, that may be 15 minutes every time you do it. You cross
$15
the line.
every time.
Yeah.
Every time you do it. So this is not just crazy conspiracy stuff, folks. This is what these climate change, the John Kerrys and the Barack Obamas, because he's still pulling the strings in the background.
And that's why I say at least admit what you're doing, quote unquote progressives. At least admit that you think the Constitution is obsolete. And that's what the initial progressives in the 1880 to 1920 historical context, that's actually what they were saying. Just admit you think the Constitution is obsolete and we should change it. But we don't get that. We get Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama saying, oh, yeah, we love the Constitution, but you know what? We're going to change it.
Yeah.
We're going to fundamentally change this nation is what Barack Obama promised.
All right, next story.
All right.
Fired up.
Abe mentioned tonight is the last of the debates amongst the Republican candidates, sans Mr. Trump.
Except for Mr. Trump.
That's what I said.
Former president.
Is that what you said? Sans is French.
Okay. Oh, see there.
He's Canadian.
I speak several languages, but that one right there got by me. I'm sorry, Fred.
It's in Tuscaloosa, Alabama tonight. And we'll keep you up to date on that for participants tonight. But Mr. Trump won't be there. No big
Why
surprise. Well, he had his own little event last night in Iowa. He had a town hall there with Fox's Sean Hannity.
It's not a town hall.
No questions were allowed from the audience.
No, it's not a town hall when you just got your fans in there and Sean Hannity's asking you questions.
Yes.
A town hall is when you have questions from the audience that are, you don't know what they're going to be, and it's an open mic situation.
Right.
So Sean Hannity on the Fox News. They shouldn't call it a town hall. Just call it Sean Hannity worships Donald Trump, and so do the other people here in the audience. And that's fine. Do that, but don't call it a town hall, and then don't allow any questions from the audience.
Yeah,
because a real town hall refers back to like New England town halls, where everyone got together. Oftentimes it was at the church.
That's a genuine town hall.
That was a town hall, and then you have the mayor or whoever. And then everyone asks questions. They stand up. I have a question. Mayor Green, I don't like what,
Right. Yeah. Well, the reason I said Sean Hannity worships Donald Trump, and I'm just kidding around, okay? But come on. Sean Hannity's had three one-on-one, quote, town halls with former President Trump in the last 6 months. Okay? So... which is fine. I'm sure that probably helps his ratings, but they're not town halls. Okay, they're not give and take questions that you don't know what they're going to be. They invite Trump fans in, so they clap for everything he says, basically, and then Sean Hannity asks his questions, and it's good for business. Okay, it's good for business for Sean Hannity and for President Trump to get an hour on national cable news. It's good for him and his campaign. But he did that last night in lieu of going to the debate tonight.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I think Mr. Trump tonight is holding a fundraiser in Florida. I think that's where he's going to be.
Are they going to be showing the debate while he's doing the fundraising? You think?
No, fundraiser, I don't think so.
No.
There was an interesting moment last night in the town hall. And it had to do with the charges that have been coming from the mainstream media and the Democrats that if you elect Trump, he's going to be a dictator. So that was a question that Sean Hannity did throw at the former president last night. Cut number one.
The media has been focused on this and attacking you. Under no circumstances. You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
what?
He's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border and I want to drill. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator.
I don't know. What's he talking about?
Well, he's just saying executive order on day one.
By the way, it took him 5 minutes to answer that question. He didn't want to answer it.
Well, I don't think it's being a dictator to issue executive orders, because all the presidents now of both parties appear to be doing that as a way to get things done.
I'm just saying he didn't want to answer the question. President Trump he didn't like Sean Hannity asking him the question about you. The left says you want to be a dictator. Is that true? He didn't want to answer that question because day one, he wants to exact retribution to these people on the left and who he views as treating him unfairly. And
that's a lot of people.
And, that's what he's going to do on day one. Now, if you believe that's a good thing, a lot of Americans do, that Trump is just going to bring retribution.
Political payback.
But I don't think that answer plays well among the independent voters in America.
Yeah.
Answering a question like that. I don't think it plays well. But that's how that went down last night. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Life is precious, and a child is truly a gift from God. Even inside the womb, the baby is living with a heartbeat that grows stronger every day. But abortion stops that beating heart. Protecting the life of the unborn is more than just a noble cause. It's our duty and our privilege. Thank you for continuing to fight for the sanctity of life, and stay encouraged. It's a winning fight. A reminder from AFA.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, Almost TP. The war between Israel and Hamas continues to ramp up. Trey Yingst has the latest from southern Israel.
Amid outgoing rocket fire from the Gaza Strip, the Israelis launching more strikes against Hamas targets in the enclave. They say they hit 250 different locations over the past day. Israeli forces say they continue to locate different weapons storage facilities, tunnel entrances, and explosives. The Israelis also targeting launching sites responsible for the barrage of rockets that targeted the Israeli city of Tel Aviv yesterday. Inside Gaza, the death toll continues to rise. An Israeli strike against Deir al-Balah in central Gaza killed multiple Palestinians.
NCAA swimming legend and women's sports advocate Riley Gaines hit back against a so-called squad Democrat after she called her and other witnesses' testimony against transgender males in women's sports transphobic. Gaines fired back at Representative Summer Lee of Pennsylvania, the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee on Health, after the squad member took a shot at the witness's testimony during her opening remarks. Gaines says allowing men to compete against women defeats the whole purpose of Title IX.
It's an abomination. I think it's despicable, and I believe it's criminal what they're doing. In the name of inclusivity and ironically enough, feminism, they're actively excluding female athletes.
A California Moms for Liberty chapter and conservative groups are suing Yolo County and its library system, alleging their First Amendment rights were abridged by protests against them during events at the Davis Library Branch. The suit stems from a series of events at Mary L. Stevens branch of the Yolo County Library System last year that garnered nationwide attention, including calls to local law enforcement, a series of bomb threats, and accusations of hate speech against the LGBT community. The suit contends that Diane Lopez, the county librarian, and D. Scott Love, a regional manager who oversees the Davis branch, interfered with the right of Moms for Liberty and others to express their views about sex, gender identity, and athletics while using a public meeting room at the Davis branch. Sophia Laurie is with Yolo County Moms for Liberty.
The ultimate goal here is that a government official does not have the right to violate our First Amendment.
The groups are represented by Alliance Defending Freedom. Here's attorney Logan Spina.
We started to try to deal with this issue without litigation at all because, as you pointed out and as Sophia explained, it's such a clear violation of free speech for the government, especially in a public forum like a library, to shut down speech just because it doesn't like the message. So we started off by sending a letter, but the library refused to change its policy and to allow Moms for Liberty to host a similar event with the same message. So we had to resort to litigation, and now the ball's in their court. We hope that they'll still simply respond by changing their policy, but they may respond with emotion or whatever else, but we'll see this case through to the end.
The federal government is waging a war against pro-life pregnancy centers and planning to use it for the opposite purpose. Charlie Butts has the story.
In Washington, Health and Human Services has proposed a rule change that would prohibit pro-life pregnancy centers from receiving federal funds. Katie Daniel of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America provides an example.
The governor of Pennsylvania, who has said he wants to end the 25-year partnership with Real Alternatives. It's been very successful in their state, but it does say that abortion is not the best option. It's pro-life, and he wants to redirect those funds to Planned Parenthood. Now the Biden administration wants to do that nationwide.
Those funds are Title X family planning dollars, and the pro-life centers have been using the money to give women a step up and save the babies' lives.
That's absolutely right. That is the foundation of the pro-life movement, of the pregnancy center movement, is meeting that need, whatever it is in the moment. Instead, the abortion industry offers one answer to every problem. They don't help you keep your baby. They tell you you should abort your baby.
The Biden administration's position doesn't sit well with the American public. A Creative Response Concepts poll determined 74% favoring public funds for the pro-life pregnancy help centers. I'm Charlie Butts.
American Family News is online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app on Muskie Pew.
In Psalm 122, David urges us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. All of Israel needs our prayers now. As Hamas attacks day after day, would you and your family join with your AFA family to pray for all those who have lost loved ones and who still face incredible danger at the hands of terrorists who hate God and His people? Tim Wildman has a personal message for you with suggestions on how you can pray and stay informed. Please take time to read it today at afa.net. Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Ed, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joined us. Good morning, Steve.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
So we were talking about the Republican debate tonight in Tuscaloosa.
Yes.
We've got four candidates. You got
Governor Christie.
Yes.
You've got Governor DeSantis.
You got three governors.
Yeah, three governors.
Two
DeSantis,
are former. Yeah.
Right. DeSantis, Christie, and
Ramaswamy.
Ramaswamy was the governor. He's an entrepreneur.
Nikki Haley.
And then Nikki Haley, who was governor
of South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yep. So they'll be in Tuscaloosa.
They will be.
Tonight.
Roll Tide.
Would that be the last Republican debate? What would you say?
Roll Tide.
Had to get it. Had to get that in there.
It's in my marriage vows.
Yeah. So, my question, Steve, would you have dated and married your wife if she'd been a Vanderbilt fan? That's what I want to know.
Yes, she's a quality.
Because you weren't an Alabama
I was
fan.
Right, you
not.
got
She's
drafted
a
in.
quality woman, regardless of her collegiate affiliations.
I'm just kidding.
She also, by the way, you should like her. She went to state.
Yeah, she did.
She played in the Maroon Band.
Famous Maroon Band.
The famous Maroon
Mississippi
Band.
State.
And she also played in the $1 Million Band, but she played clarinet.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the famous Maroon Band is a band at Mississippi State, my alma mater, and the $1 Million Band is what the University of Alabama's marching band is known as.
It is. And by the way, did you see the Mississippi State Band this year? At any of the games?
Yeah.
Hundreds. I mean, massive. They are able to line up on the football field like on the line every 5 yards, and they cover the whole field.
Right.
They're huge.
We believe in giving our football scholarships to band members.
Apparently.
So,
well, that explains a lot.
Well, you might be able to beat us in football, but by golly,
we're going to outband you.
We're winning that halftime show. I'll tell you that right now, just by the sheer numbers.
Exactly.
That explains a lot about this past season.
All right.
Our number two.
It's funny. The bands in colleges are given names. They're nicknames. They're just not all known as the University of So and So marching band. They're given nicknames, which I like.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that debate is tonight. Yep. Is be the fourth one.
It is the fourth one.
And former President Trump is not going to be there.
He's sitting this one out again.
And this is the final debate before the Iowa caucuses?
I believe so. The Iowa caucus is in January. So yes.
January 15th, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
All right. Well, we will see what they say tonight.
So let me ask you.
Who's the moderators?
Megyn Kelly is one, and there's the gal that was with ABC News for a while. Let me look that up.
And where is it going to be? Where can you watch it?
Well, you can watch it on the CW, the network
channel
CW, and there's another one.
National News or something, I think.
Yeah.
What does CW stand for? Anybody know?
No, that was I think that was like a combination of used to be like a Warner network, and then. CW network. I'm going to look that up.
Look that up. So the CW network, I've seen it. I don't think I watch it. I don't watch shows on there. I don't know what's on there.
Okay, so here are the moderators. News Nation is Elizabeth Vargas. She used to be with ABC News.
Okay.
Megyn Kelly.
Okay.
And then the Washington Free Beacon editor, Elena Johnson. All of these people tend to be conservative-minded. So we're liable to get. To be honest, even the liberal, the MSNBC moderators were fairly good.
Lester Holt did a good job.
I thought they
did a pretty good job.
By the way, the CW network derived from the network's name is derived from the first letters of the names of its two founding co-owners, CBS Corporation and Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers owned by Time Warner, later AT&T's Warner Media. So the W was from Warner, and I guess they combined it because Warner used to have its own network, but then they combined it with CBS to create the CW.
Okay, so you can watch it on the CW network, or you can tune in to News Nation. And again, they're doing one of their hosts.
I may not be able to watch it. I'm going to say I don't have the CW.
But you can log into News Nation. You can watch it online.
That's what I'll
That's the app, you mean?
News Nation. They probably have an app, but the event will air on its website and streaming platforms.
Okay.
All right.
So
that's tonight in Tuscaloosa, probably 8 o'clock Central Time. I'm guessing.
So here's what my question to you regarding this. I was speaking with Bob Vanderplatz. We were talking about the GOP
in Iowa,
field.
from Iowa.
He is
Bob.
from Iowa,
Yeah.
but he's also they call him the Kingmaker. I've been talking to him since he was a prince maker for a long, long time. But he's very astute politically and everything. And he said that the Ron DeSantis debate with Gavin Newsom should energize his campaign, and the debates with Trump not being a part of them could energize his campaign to the point where he might be competitive. What do you think?
You mean nationally or in Iowa? You're talking about Governor DeSantis.
Governor DeSantis. Well, here's the thing. If he wins in Iowa, that changes the whole ballgame. All of a sudden, he's a player, right? Would you think?
Governor DeSantis, you mean?
If Governor DeSantis wins in Iowa.
Well, I think it's one of those situations where Governor DeSantis almost has to win Florida.
You mean Iowa
and Florida?
Iowa, Iowa, and if he doesn't, it would be very hard for him to rise from a second place there and win. He it seems, this is me. This is one person's opinion, albeit a very intelligent opinion, but still one person's opinion. I think Governor DeSantis needs to win Iowa outright in the caucuses, and then he can say, "See, Trump's winning is not inevitable. We've got a game on." But I think that's why DeSantis is spending all that time and resources in Iowa. He's been to Iowa. He's been to every county in Iowa and talked to people and took questions because he's been focusing so much time, energy, and effort on Iowa because evidently he feels like he needs to win Iowa as well.
I'm gonna say I don't think the debate between DeSantis and Gavin Newsom helped Governor DeSantis because that was last week, and I haven't seen much in the way of getting a bump for the Florida governor. I would also say I agree with Tim. Governor DeSantis has to win Iowa. I would say he has to win New Hampshire and South Carolina before he becomes a player. Here are the three last Iowa GOP caucus winners. Okay, 2008, 12.
Republicans?
Yep, 2016. Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, Ted Cruz. Neither of those three went on to win the GOP nomination because they were foiled in New Hampshire. So I think
or other states,
or other states, but it just because you win in Iowa, it does give you some attention. But oftentimes people take a look, and I think this would probably be the case. My prediction is they will take a look. Some people will take a look at DeSantis for the first time. I think it's going to be extremely difficult for any of the four who are going to be on the stage tonight to defeat.
It would have to be one-on-one. To have any chance at all.
Yeah, Ramaswamy and
to have any chance at all
would have to drop out
to compete with Donald Trump. It appears now the polling could be wrong, but I don't think it's this wrong. I mean, where we've talked about that Trump is out in front
right.
among Republican voters. But you would have to have it down to one-on-one to be able to have a chance to defeat him. Because right now, if you look at the polling, generally speaking, Trump's polling around anywhere from 50 to 60% of Republican voters, right?
I am at the site 538, which is a political site, and it has a graph here that you can look at the latest polls in each state.
Are you talking about nationally polls or
well, both?
polling? Okay.
This is I can
Go
tell you
ahead.
the Iowa numbers.
Go ahead.
In Iowa, as of the last one they took, which I guess was December 6th, Trump is at Trump is at 45.9%, and DeSantis is right around 20%. Haley is about 18%, and Ramaswamy is down in single digits.
Okay. Now, Iowa is a caucus state, not a primary state. So those numbers don't matter as much as how many people you've got committed to caucus for you.
Right.
So an underdog who outworks the favorite has a better chance in Iowa than it does in a state that's just an open primary.
Well, and let me tell you about South Carolina then. South Carolina, Trump has 49.2%. He's polling, and DeSantis is below Haley, and he's at about 11. Yeah,
how much is she polling?
She's polling at 21.
Okay. See what I mean? So let's say you have Trump with 50% of the Republican vote. Okay. That means 50% don't want him. Right? So that means the only way you would have a chance to knock him off would be to have it down to one-on-one. And that doesn't appear to be going to happen anytime soon, especially between DeSantis and Nikki Haley, because Ramaswamy and is that pronounce his name correctly?
Yes.
Vivek Ramaswamy and Chris Christie, they don't have a chance at all. Nikki Haley and DeSantis would have a chance if it were just one of them. You see what I'm saying? Am I making sense?
Yes.
So, thank you.
But here's the thing though about that is that you can't just say that if Nikki Haley were to drop out that those votes would go to Trump. Particularly with Nikki Haley, she's got the never Trump vote. She's got the Republicans that under no circumstances would they be voting for Donald Trump. So
well, some of them are voting for DeSantis.
Right, but I mean if she dropped out, you could put them in DeSantis's camp. But Ramaswamy would probably go to Trump.
Yeah, but he's down there around 4 and 5, 3, 4, and 5%. Really, talking about Ramaswamy, I like the guy. I like the guy, huh?
In South Carolina, he's at
he's at 2%. He's not. He's an absolutely non-factor. Again, I said, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are long shots. Vivek Ramaswamy and Chris Christie are no shots.
Right.
All right. So that's just the reality.
And you're saying DeSantis and Haley are also no shots as long as they are splitting the never Trump vote.
Yes, sir. That's what I'm.
I think that's
not
a fair appraisal.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah,
it's out there in front of us.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to get into speculating now, but if what happens if Donald Trump isn't there?
As it doesn't show up?
No, he isn't the Republican nominee.
Oh, if he loses in the primary?
No. Well, I'm just saying, what if he gets convicted of in federal court of major felonies?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know what that would do to public opinion, but there's no law that says he can't still run. So knowing him, and I don't, but I mean, guessing from what I know of him, he wouldn't drop out. So he'd still think he's in the race. Now, what that would do to the polls, I don't know.
Okay, and don't misunderstand me. We're not going to sit here and dissect the legitimacy or illegitimacy of ever felony count indictment against former President Trump. Some of them appear to be nothing more than it was silly, and others appear. I wouldn't want to be Donald Trump against a federal prosecutor on some of this stuff because it appears he did some things that were,
especially in the venues. Washington D.C. and the Atlanta area, Fulton County.
So I'm just saying, what if he is not eligible because he is? You're saying he can be eligible anyway?
I don't think that it's illegal for him to run.
Here's what I think the Democrats want to happen. Again, this is one person's opinion. If you disagree with it, that is fine. We can still be friends. All right, we can still be friends. Why can't we be friends? That was the song. I think the Democrats would like for President Trump to win the nomination on the Republican side, and then he gets convicted of these of felonies, and he's either sent to prison. It'll be on appeal for a long time probably, or get house arrest or whatever happens. Anyway, he'll be convicted. And so you have a guy who's been chosen by the Republican voters, a majority of them, to be their nominee, while he's mortally wounded as a general election candidate because he's already it's already a 50-50 country, right? So if you take people may say, I don't believe that. You take independents and a lot of women independents and you tag a convicted felon notice on an already candidate that's very divisive, talking about President Trump. Now, he's been polling right ahead of Biden, but then the next week Biden will poll ahead of him if you want to look at the polls, okay? But I'm just saying if you put convicted felon on that, he has no chance. He has no chance to win the general election. So I think the Democrat strategy they would like to see would be Donald Trump is selected by the Republicans, and it appears he's on track to do that. And then he's convicted, and then he's basically no good as a general election candidate. Does that make sense as a possible scenario?
Yes. I'm not sure that many Democrats want to face Trump if Biden is his competition. I just think in their minds that's kind of a toss-up. Now,
what's the toss-up?
Trump v. Biden again.
Even if he's convicted.
I don't know about that. I don't know if he's convicted, then it's probably not a toss-up. But what you're saying is that the Democrats right now expect every one of those if-then things to happen.
You know who's showing up better? The best candidate to face Biden in the election in the polls, for the most part.
Nikki Haley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nikki Haley is showing up as again, I'm just doing an analysis of what's out there in the poll. If you look at the polls that show, okay, who is more likely who fares better against Biden, that's slim. It's not a big difference, but it's who fares better against Biden. Again, these national polls are almost worthless because you have to look at the 6 or 7 or 8 swing states. That's really all that matters. Because the state I live in, Mississippi, you can the Republican candidate can be a bird, and it's going to beat that bird is going to beat Joe Biden,
right?
Okay, or as Donald Trump calls Nikki Haley, bird brain,
right?
Okay, so in California, that same bird could put a D by its name, and it would beat the Republican candidate.
Right.
So you have states that are already decided we don't even have to poll. All right. But if you have those 6 or 7 or 8 swing states where the election is going to be decided, as it has been since what? Bush versus Gore?
Yeah.
So I'm saying that actually Nikki Haley shows up better in the polls versus Biden than does DeSantis or Trump. Now, again, it's not a huge margin. Like Nikki Haley may be 2 or 3 percentage points ahead of DeSantis or Donald Trump. Go ahead.
5 points. She beats Biden. Haley beats Biden. Let me take that back. Trump.
What are you looking at? What are you quoting from?
RCP for Real Clear Politics polling, and the RCP average has Haley up by 5 points, 4.8 points.
You're talking about if she went one-on-one against Biden.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Can I explain why I think that is? I think that is because, first of all, I think most Americans even most Democrats don't like Biden. Okay. If Biden is the candidate for the Democratic Party, he's a very weak candidate. But I think the vast majority of Americans are very mushy. They are primarily pragmatic.
The mushy middle?
Yeah, they're mushy about principled stands. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this or that. They are worried about the economy. They're worried about immigration. That what they don't want is they don't want division anymore. So that's why
They're peacemakers.
Well, I think they're tired of the rancor, and that's why I don't think Donald Trump has a good chance. I think that's why Haley Barbour comes out on top of Ron DeSantis. Haley Barbour. Nikki Haley, sorry.
Wow.
I am so sorry. I apologize to Nikki Haley. I think that's why Nikki Haley comes out on top of even Ron DeSantis, because what most voters probably know about Ron DeSantis is that he's combative and he is a bit divisive on his stance, so they don't want that either. Nikki Haley is a woman. They assume she's not going to be making smart aleck comments or insults. She's going to be businesslike, and she's going to handle the problems. I think that's why she comes out polling right now above Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Ron DeSantis, is because those other three candidates, I think, look to most Americans as being very weak, like Biden, really divisive, like Donald Trump, kind of divisive, like Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
That's my
That's
take.
a good point. Good points all.
Yeah.
What were you saying? You were citing the Real Clear Politics. Nikki Haley versus Biden, and she was up
4.8%. Yeah, or points.
Okay.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying about we're basically a 50-50 country, and have been since Bush versus Gore, and maybe even before that. 50% of Americans are going to vote Democrat, and 50% are going to vote Republican. Almost no matter what, huh? You do have your middle. You had to have your independents out there, and so a lot of people say, well, which way are they going to break, and why are they going to vote one way?
I will say this in Donald Trump's favor in a general election. Again, tossing out all the and obviously you shouldn't toss all this out in terms of his legal issues, his the lawsuits and the criminal prosecutions, because they're going to play a big factor. But setting those things aside, I think former President Trump is doing better with the black community and the Hispanic community, which, all things being equal, might actually give him a bump or two, percentage point wise, in a general election.
Gentlemen?
Again, that's if there were no legal.
I want to get this in before we leave, because this is breaking news. Kevin McCarthy is resigning from Congress. He will not. He's leaving at the end of this year.
Is he going to run for president?
No, he says he's not done serving the American people. So I don't know.
That's what they all say.
Yeah.
That means I'm going to K Street, going to make a killing.
I
wouldn't doubt it. I'm not.
In your own words, bingo. That's right. I'm going to serve the American people.
That's what they all do.
Making a bundle.
That's what they all do, Republicans and Democrats. When they get out of Congress, they go to lobby, and they make a mint. I mean, huh?
Well, if you're him and you go, listen, I got my head beat in here in Congress.
Right.
Both sides got voted out. Good grief. Who wants to put up with that stuff anymore? I'm done. I'm serving number one.
Maybe he wants to go serve as Matt Gaetz, chief of staff.
I bet. I'm thinking that's it.
What about a Gaetz McCarthy ticket? How would that do?
You ever see the Pink Panther movies where the chief inspector Dreyfus is always trying to kill Inspector Clouseau because he's just so frustrated? Yeah. I can see Kevin McCarthy doing that to Matt Gaetz, just hanging around in the shadows, just trying to.
All right.
Wow, so that's breaking news.
Yes. Okay.
Signing.
Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
Thanks to Ed and Brent Creeley, our producer, and Fred Jackson, who was with us earlier, and Abraham Hamilton III, who joined us last hour. Have a great afternoon. Keep listening to AFR. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. See you tomorrow. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family